Well, hello, everyone. Happy days are here again. So just quickly, how many of you were in the Healdsburg area during the 50s and 60s? Let's see a raise of hands. So not that many, I'm surprised. Okay, well,
That's before our time.
well, unfortunately, it wasn't before my time. 50s and 60s. Good job, Carol. So I'm old enough to remember Healdsburg in those times, not the early 50s, but definitely through the middle 50s. So we're going to try to add a little levity to this whole situation because talking about internment and rationing isn't all that fun. But so this presentation is meant to be a trip down memory lane for many of you, if you've been around for a while. And for the rest of the audience who maybe are newer to the area, you get a chance to get a little look at what Healdsburg was like back in that time. So glamour returns to America after the dark days of World War II. And as expressed in this photo, you can see the glamour. Note the gorgeous blue evening gown, not to mention those beautiful, large white wall tires on that car. I mean, come on. Okay, so let's take a minute to review what happened during this period of time. Then we'll move on to Healdsburg specifically, but the population of Healdsburg in 1950 was 3,258. How do I get this to move up? And in 1970, it had grown to 5,438. Can I up arrow? I just want to leave my notes up.
You've got to click here, and then
This might be.
you need a 14-year-old, and then
Oh, that's good. Okay, so how many of you are baby boomers then? 1964, 1970 something? I've lost it. Anyway, so let's talk about some inventions that took place during the 50s. This might surprise you. There was the credit card that first came out, the microchip, Russian Sputnik was circling the Earth, and in 1953, that marvel that many of you owned was the transistor radio. Yes. And we talked about some of these, but the favorite TV shows in the 60s were Rawhide, Hogan's Heroes, you saw a picture up there, Bonanza, Peyton Place, Gunsmoke, and how about Get Smart? Oh my goodness, that was later in the 60s. Okay, so the Korean War, it wasn't all happy times, by the way. The Korean War was from June 1950 to July 1953, and that ending in an armistice agreement. America was already becoming involved in Vietnam in the 50s, and our first troops were sent there in 1965. The Cuban Missile Crisis took place on October of 1962, and Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965. And of course, it was the heartbreaking memory of losing the Kennedy brothers during that time. So we'll try to move on to more happy stuff. Let's talk about Healdsburg. Okay. So at the time, Healdsburg was a farming and ranching community. It was a small country town. That's the way I remember it. It serviced the needs of the surrounding community. And of course, prunes were king, but dairies were also a relevant part of Sonoma County agriculture. And of course, yes, we need to talk about prunes. How could we talk about Healdsburg without talking about prunes? Much of the prune harvesting at this time was done manually on your hands and knees, as we see there. Families would harvest the crop as a family group a lot of the times. The school year was delayed if the prune crop was maturing late that year. And in an agricultural report that I found, it said that prunes were, quote, the crop that kept the area agriculture and economy sound from 1923 to 1970. So they were a big thing. Then we had lumber, and lumber was a big deal here. This is the Idaho Lumber Company in 1968, currently the location of Enzo Village. Good, see, we're getting a little, everybody's paying attention. They supplied much of the cut lumber and trusses for the growing San Francisco Bay Area. It was a major employer in Healdsburg during its heyday, and everyone knew someone who worked at Idaco. Now, this is a beautiful shot here, Healdsburg Avenue. How fun is it to see a full color photo of Healdsburg Avenue in the 50s? There were 2 stoplights, although Daryl remembers there being only 1 stoplight. That was before my time. And note the stop sign on the intersection with Matheson Street. There was a stop sign there, not a stoplight. So we had one on Matheson and one down on North Street. That's the ones I remember. And you take a look down the street, you see Club 311, which apparently was a popular bar at the time. And then the Plaza Hotel is right down past that. And then the Plaza Movie Theater, we had a movie theater on Healdsburg Avenue, is just down past that. And of course, you have to just love, right in the front line of the cars there, that Ford station wagon, 2-tone white and yellow. That was pretty special. Of course, this entire block was demolished in the 80s, but the Central Plaza itself has remained pretty much the same. It's still the focal point of Healdsburg, so we can still enjoy that today. Now, anybody who's been around for a while will remember the office. It was owned by Rose Pavoni. It was a favorite eating and meeting spot, and it was also known for its friendly card game in the back room in the afternoons. They were friendly, and it offered a great alibi. You could say, honey, trust me, I wasn't goofing around. I was at the office all afternoon. Oh, and by the way, that's Emil Pasalacqua's office up above it there, in case maybe it did require someone to handle your divorce. But anyway, that's a whole nother deal. So I remember the Iceberg Cafe. Anybody remember the Iceberg Cafe in the group? Okay, we got a few hands. I couldn't get a good picture of it, but it was just at the far end of the left side of the photo. There is where it was located. And so I wondered myself, I said, well, where did it get its name? I mean, I never really thought about it. It was always just the Iceberg Cafe. Well, I never really thought about it. And then when I started doing this talk, I said, but I think I found the answer. The Healdsburg Ice Company was right next door. And you can note the ice sign up on top of the building up there. And I'm guessing maybe that's where the Iceberg Cafe got its name. So I could be proved wrong on that.
Did you see the price of gas?
29 cents. Yeah, that was a little higher than I remember, but yeah, that was a good deal. So early days in downtown, and this might surprise a lot of people, but on the corner of Healdsburg Avenue and West Matheson, William Maher Auto Glass and Leather Goods was the place to go, whether you needed a harness, a saddle, a new windshield, or a top for your convertible. And I was in that store. I remember it. And I talk about it all the time, how Healdsburg, you could buy a saddle in town. So it was interesting. So it's a good example of old time businesses that were still around in the 50s. I mean, that's what it looked like. Far cry from, what the downtown looks like today. But yeah, it was still there. And if you were a kid in the 50s and 60s, you'll remember Carragher's Ben Franklin. It was a place of wonder for a young kid like me. Diane Carragher, who was, her and her husband owned the store. Diane is still a volunteer at the Healdsburg Museum. But you'd walk through that store as a kid, and it was just amazing.
What does that look like?
Well, it's across from single thread. Yeah, center and yeah. So yeah, the building is still there. It's kind of hard to get a perspective there, but yeah, that same building is still there. Just has several different occupants now. Oh God, I love this photo. We had furniture in town. Healdsburg also had a fine furniture store, Fowler's Furniture on North Street. The furniture was priced affordable for the population of Healdsburg. This shows a perfect example of mid-century modern design, which is very popular again today. I love the sofa. I hate the swag lamp. Fortunately, this was prior to shag carpeting, so we didn't have to deal with that. But Everybody knows about shag carpeting, right? It was terrible. Okay. Oh my, home bakery. Yes, home bakery. Carol recognizes that. That was a favorite in town. This is where Villette is now. So, yeah. Um, so I remember this very well as a kid. And their eclairs and cream puffs, well, they were to die for. And if you note in the window, they have a multi-tier wedding cake in the window, which was, I mean, that's pretty spectacular. As a kid, a trip to home bakery was a special treat. Hopefully those bakers there never got their ties caught in the mixers, but I think they were probably pretty safe. Okay, Barbieri's home furnishings. We have a Barbieri in the audience here tonight. Barbieri's home furnishing carried the latest in home electronics. And you could call the store, you could reach them by dialing 30 on your phone at the time. So we talked about Rosenberg and Bush. It was a fixture in town when I was growing up in Healdsburg, located on North Street. They stocked a wide variety of clothing for school-age kids and men and women. No need to drive to Santa Rosa to buy that. They had everything you would need. And I remember going there for my back-to-school shopping at Rosenberg's. The women's clothing was on the left, and the men's clothing was on the right. Okay, Melanie Records. Anybody remember Melanie Records? We got a few. Melanie Records was located on Center Street, just across the plaza on Center Street. It was a favorite hangout for teenagers at the time. You could stop by after school, slip on some headphones, and lay down a piece of vinyl and listen to your favorite songs at their listening stations. Now that was cool. Oops. Oh my God, somebody said, that's Miss Healdsburg, 1962. And some people might recognize somebody in those pictures there. We had a Miss Healdsburg contest that ran from 1958 to 1969. This is when 10 of Healdsburg's loveliest young girls would vie for the title of Miss Healdsburg. And they actually called them girls back then, so I don't know what that was all about. The contest was sponsored by the Healdsburg 2030 Club. And when the 2030 Club ended its reign in Healdsburg, the contest ended. And who was crowned Miss Healdsburg in 1962? Nobody? It was Sue Thomas. And I don't know which one's Sue Thomas. Okay, old timers will remember Lonnie's. Lonnie's Coffee Shop, owned by Lonnie Haywood, was a busy spot, especially on Friday nights. Located on what is now the McDonald's southern part of their parking lot. Lonnie's offered an extensive menu and were open late hours, specializing in gooder food, complete dinners. That's kind of a tribute to Lonnie Haywood's sense of humor. So he did have quite a sense of humor. Okay, and we have fast food in Healdsburg. This is Ned's Beef Burgers. And there were a couple of them in town. Located in an area what is now the old Rite Aid building, which is closed. Ned's Beef Burgers was so confident that prices were stable at this time that he had his neon sign permanently proclaim that burgers were only 19 cents. That's a cool place. I remember going there. Okay. Now, somebody mentioned Reed and Bell earlier. So this is a picture of Grumpy's Reed and Bell. It was also located in the area of the parking lot of the old Rite Aid store. Reed and Bell was a favorite for the high school kids in the 50s. I remember my older brother would go there during his lunch break when the high school had an open campus policy. So that was Reed and Bell. And then my place to go to was A&W Root Beer. Hey! Let's hear it for A&W Root Beer. This was a special gathering spot when I was in high school in the 60s. It is currently the Healdsburger, if you're wondering where it is. Jess White was the proprietor, offering frosty mugs of root beer along with Papa, Mama and Baby Burgers. Yeah, Jess and his family lived in the house directly behind the restaurant. I actually dated his daughter, Gail White, when I was in high school. Um, but I don't remember getting any free food. So I guess that didn't work out so well. Anyway, favorite hangout back when I was a kid. And here's Arctic Circle, a more recent addition to the fast food restaurants, but you can't forget about Arctic Circle. It was located at the corner of Healdsburg Avenue and North Streets. It was here at the end of the 60s, very much at the end of the 60s, but fell to the wrecking ball in 1981 when the entire 300 block of Healdsburg Avenue, of course, was razed and demolished. So it didn't last for very long. And we'll go back to City Hall. And the original City Hall was demolished in 1960, and the city needed a new City Hall. So this is what they built. It looks very 60-ish, right? Completed in 1962, it had a short life, as it soon became clear that the space was too small to accommodate the growing city. So the city of Healdsburg built their new City Hall at the corner of North and Vine Streets. The 60s era building retains much of its original architecture, and it currently houses what is its main tenant, Acorn. That's correct. Now, this goes way back, but whoops, come on. Healdsburg General Hospital. Right, doctor? Anyone living in Healdsburg in the 50s and 60s will remember the old Healdsburg General Hospital. It originally opened in 1929 and was described in the Healdsburg Tribune as modern in every detail. It was back then. A Mission Gothic architecture with its white stucco walls, and you could immediately recognize it if you drove by it in town. It was quite a structure. It was a fixture in the community until the early 70s when the new hospital was built. Countless babies were born here, and it served the emergency needs of the surrounding community. I had a broken leg in 5th grade, and it was set in this hospital. So, Redwood Highway leaves downtown. Like many small towns in Marin, Sonoma, and Mendocino counties, the Redwood Highway, the main artery running north of the Golden Gate Bridge, went directly through downtowns. That all changed when the freeway bypass was completed in 1962. And that's the freeway going by downtown Healdsburg. Up to that point, main highway went right through town. The bypass brought a series of major changes to downtown Healdsburg. With the 101 traffic just flying by Healdsburg, the city experienced a significant drop in business during the 70s and 80s. And of course, tourism and the wine industry kind of brought the city back to life. But those were tough times for Healdsburg. But we had bowling. Did you know that Healdsburg had 2 bowling lanes? Yes, Healdsburg Bowling Lanes was located at the corner of Mitchell Lane and Healdsburg Avenue. And Solar Bowl over here, that building is still there, by the way. It used to be Max Machine Shop. I'm not sure what's in there now. Yeah. So this is located across from the Chevrolet dealership. And on the left-hand side, you see the young ladies there with the bowling balls. That was a staged photo, but it was part of the sports program at the high school. For PE, you would actually go down and have an opportunity to bowl at Healdsburg Bowling. And we had parties and dancing. And of course, this is still here, but this was the jewel of the city, the Villa Chanticleer. The villa began its life as an exclusive French resort. The current building was constructed by an investment group led by a gentleman named Jack Kent. And the resort was never opened under his management and was later purchased by the city of Healdsburg out of bankruptcy. There were lots of joyous occasions here, including prom night, weddings, dinner dances, and fundraising events. And probably an innumerable number of cocktails have been consumed at the Horseshoe Bar. And we had fun on the Russian River. The Russian River, a huge draw from the Bay Area in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, was still well used for a recreation area in the 50s and 60s. Note the spectators up on the bridge. They were obviously having an event that day. They held many events on the river, including boat racing and water skiing. Oh my. Okay, well, music, was a big part of the 50s and 60s. And I just grabbed a few albums here to give you a kind of idea how things progressed in the music field. It shaped the culture of the 50s and 60s. I chose a few album covers that represent the early 50s up and through the later 60s, starting with Mr. Perry Como. That's way back. Ricky Nelson is next, and that was my wife's heartthrob, Ricky Nelson. She loved Ricky Nelson, still does. Now, Elvis Presley, my mom loved Elvis Presley. She thought he was the best. You have the Beach Boys, of course, the Beatles. How can you forget the Beatles? The rock group Cream. And note how the album covers are starting to change and look a little bit different. Yeah. And the last one is Big Brother and the Holding Company. That was featuring a young startup vocalist. Her name was Janis Joplin. Okay. Look at that. Okay. One thing defines the 1560s, it would have to be the automobile. And we're going to talk some more about that. But here we see Mr. Quimby at his Shell station at the corner of Healdsburg Avenue and North Street. The uniform is truly something special. I mean, and you got to love the hat, They would come out, pump your gas. They would wash your windshield. They'd check the oil. Do whatever you needed on your car as you drove in to get the gas pump. But there was no fast food here, but you could buy some tires. And of course, I have to mention Wiki's Chevron service because I would be remiss in not talking about that. Wiki's Chevron, man. It was a fixture at the south end of town. It boasted being the largest such facility north of the Golden Gate. And they serviced heavy-duty trucks and such. It was an amazing place. The proprietor, Paul Whitkey, was there always to greet you with a smile. So this is something I found. This is quite interesting. And some younger people may know what I'm talking about. But in the 50s, they offered the following special. For $1.50, they would inspect your front wheels, do a complete chassis lubrication, service the air cleaner, water your battery, and clean your cables. So I tried to do a rough count how many gas stations we had in town at this time within about a 3-block radius of downtown. And I came up with at least 8. So they were everywhere. They were everywhere. Now we're going to talk about cars. So the evolution of the automobile. And take a look at this 1950 Pontiac Chieftain Deluxe. Now that's quite a grill. At the conclusion of World War II, automakers were in a rush to fulfill the needs and desires of the American public. So let's take a look at how the automobile evolved. And I note the difference in styling over the 10-year period. Here you see a 1960 Pontiac Bonneville and a 1960 Buick LeSabre. Cars were bigger, they were more stylish and more powerful, but they still didn't have any seatbelts. Our family had a 1960 Buick LeSabre. Unfortunately, it wasn't red and it wasn't a convertible. So, but it was still a cool car, but no convertible. So in 1964, the Pontiac GTO was the start of a revolution. The idea developed by John DeLorean, it was the first mid-sized car with a very large V8 engine. And I believe, and I could be proved wrong on this, that Steve Opperman was the first in town to own a 1964 GTO. And there's a 1968 GTO. That's actually a 1969 GTO. That's wrong up there. So the GTO was all grown up at this time, and it had options that included and exceeded horsepower of 360 horsepower. And apparently, green was a very popular color in 1969. So we're going to talk more about cars because some of you know me, I was involved with cars. Healdsburg was fortunate to have 3 automobile dealers in town at this time. This is an early photo of Standard Motor Works, which would become Bell Chevrolet. the auto dealers would donate a vehicle to the high school to use the driver training programs. So can you imagine trying to parallel park that 1960 Chevrolet? Man, my driver education teacher was Dick Crapo. And to this day, I heard that. And to this day, I am still an excellent parallel parker. So Silver Pontiac Buick GMC back then, whoops, sorry about that. They opened its new location in town just north of town in 1964, just in time to present the public with the 1965 models. And I was employed at Silveros for 43 years. The Chevrolet store moved further north, and this is at the time, during that time period, was owned by Mr. Bill Castle. God rest his soul. And the Sanderson Ford has remained in its original location, and it's the oldest family-owned dealership in town. I mentioned the Mitchell Center earlier, and so I wanted you to get an idea of what that was like. So Healdsburg expanded its shopping choices with the construction of the new Mitchell Center. It hosted this large J.C. Penney store and a variety of other small businesses, including Coast to Coast Hardware and, of course, Flaky Cream Donut, which is not in the picture, it's just down the way. But Flaky Cream Donut's still there. And I went to Fraser Shoes. Included in the Mitchell Center was Fraser Shoes. Cliff Fraser offered a wide variety of shoes of all ages. This was a shoe store to shop after the Schwab brothers, who had their store down on Plaza Street, closed up, and this was our big shoe store in town. So they had a wide variety. Okay, so in closing, I would like to thank the Healdsburg Museum and the Healdsburg Historical Society for sponsoring our library talks this winter. I would also like to thank our local library for hosting us tonight. And of course, thank you, the audience, for attending this evening's talk. And remember, we have another history talk next month on the first Tuesday of the month. And our history talks are going to be in the plaza this summer, starting in June. So I hope you can all attend some of those talks.